Notice in these proofs, unlike the other proofs we've taken a look at, we're not trying to prove that two triangles are congruent to each other. We're trying to prove that two parts of those triangles are congruent to each other. So we're going to have one extra step in our proofs. The good news is it's going to begin the same way. We're going to begin with our given. So go ahead and jot down what you know. In this case, we have two segments congruent, and we have two right angles in our diagram. And we're going to need to prove the two triangles are congruent, even though that's not where we're going to end. We still need to do that. And so our second phase of our proof writing was adding tick marks for reasons that we're allowed to use. We can't just add tick marks because we want to. And so, for example, I know that those two angles in the center there are examples of vertical angles. So I'm going to add that statement. Notice I used 3 letters for my angles because just saying angle L wouldn't be specific enough. And at this point, I have enough information to prove that the two triangles are congruent to each other. And so I'll write my triangle congruency statement. Notice that I have to be careful. This time they haven't told me what triangles are congruent. So I need to make sure that I match up angles and vertices and letters in the right order. So PLQ and MLN are congruent to each other. And the reason is because of angle, angle, side. I have two angles and the side not in between them. Notice just because it's a right angle doesn't mean I necessarily use HL. So all that's old stuff. What we're doing new this time is we're going to do this one extra step. The reason that I know those two parts are now equal to each other, congruent to each other, is because the triangles are congruent. If two triangles are congruent, which we've proven, then all their parts are going to be the same as well. And so our final extra step in these new problems is going to be to say what we're trying to prove, in this case QL and NL being congruent to each other, and we're going to use the reason CPCTC, which stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. In other words, once two triangles are congruent to each other, all their parts are going to be congruent to each other as well. And so the bulk of our proof for these problems is the same as what we've already done. Prove the two triangles are congruent to each other. All we do is throw on this one extra step about CPCTC to get those corresponding parts congruent to each other.